Good evening, everybody. My name is Dr. Will Donnelly, and on behalf of the Berry College Department of English, Rhetoric, and Writing, I'd like to welcome you all to the 2015, class of 2015, Senior Creative Writing Majors Reading. Before we get started, I'd like to ask you to silence all cell phones or turn them off so as not to disturb the readings that we're about to hear. And I also just want to say, since for me, having worked with all of the students in classes who'll be reading tonight, how proud I am, how proud I know Dr. Meek is of all of the people you're about to hear. This is a really wonderful class of people, and extremely talented writers that you're going to hear tonight. And so I think you'll enjoy it very much. We'll start off tonight with Caitlin Bradley. Caitlin is a 22-year-old fantasy writer from Carrollton, Georgia, with such acclaims as unpublished but showing promise, and send me an email when your book is done, I might buy it. She's on the young writer's path of success in, she says, very small circles. I think the circles are larger, but I'll go with that. During her years at Berry College, Caitlin has spent her spare time writing, reading, and breathing all things fantasy. She's currently developing her first novel, tentatively titled Draken, and hopes to have a draft of the full manuscript completed by the year's end. Following graduation, Caitlin plans to spend her time living in the real world by day and her world by night. So now here's Caitlin Bradley.
Can you hear me? Yeah. Okay, so I'm reading an excerpt from my novel. It's not the one in the book, so surprise. Grayson scraped the side of his boot against the ground, watching as the dark leather cut through ice and snow. As usual for this time of year, the snow had been falling for several days. Then, like clockwork, it had cleared at sunset, leaving the solstice night to arrive cold but clear. Ulrich had spent the ride to tonight's hunting site, sniffing the air and watching the clouds. He swore there would be snow again before midnight, but even atmospheric affines failed sometimes. One of the visiting affines at the Water Citadel had promised that there would be no icing tonight. But, Gershon thought as he scraped his foot against the ground again, here it is. He dug the toe of his boot into the snow, but stopped when he saw dirt mixing with white flakes. Though his rock was close to the forest boundary, the snow still should have been fairly thick around it. He positioned the spikes in the heel of his boot over the mud, then pressed down. The metal cut into the earth like a hot knife through butter. The mountain ice should have set in too quickly for the snow to melt any, but something here had melted the snow almost as soon as it hit the ground. He touched his fingers to the mud and raised his eyebrows. It's still warm. Crouching and balancing on the balls of his feet a few paces to Grayshon's left, Liaric looked in his direction and thought, "Did you say something?" "Yeah," Grayshon replied. He pointed to the ground. "It's warm." Liaric furrowed his brow. "We're too far from the crescent for it to be affecting the ground here." He opened his mouth slightly, lifting his head like a cat tasting the air. Grayshon saw his chest move as he took in 3 short breaths of air, a technique the Eridomni called sipping. Liaric ran his tongue over his teeth. "That's not right," he thought. He sipped the air again, then held in the last breath. Grayshon felt something shift in the air as Liaric's body visibly tensed. Liaric cocked his head, then slowly turned to stare at the spot beneath Grayshon's feet. Unnerved by the expression on Liaric's face, Grayshon hastily pushed himself away until he was straddling the rock instead of perching at its edge. As he watched, Liaric's usually crimson irises began to fill with gold. The molten color seemed to slide out of Liaric's pupils, sloshing in the borders of the irises until it colored them completely. When the last hint of crimson disappeared from his eyes, Liaric dropped his body toward the earth. His outstretched hands slammed to the top layer of ice and snow with a sharp crack. Heads snapped up around the circle of hunters. There was a flurry of motion as they all checked weapons and turned toward the horizon, looking for the telltale gleam of their approaching prey. It was a moment before they all realized the sound had come from within their own ranks. By the time heads started turning from the horizon to the ark, Zion had stepped out of the tree line. Almost instantly, rigid stillness rippled around the circle. Zion surveyed the hunters for a moment, then clicked his tongue against the roof of his mouth. Everyone settled again, relaxed but alert. Zion strode around the perimeter of the circle and came to a stop behind Gratian. Carefully, he stepped in the empty space between Gratian and Leoric. He crouched down, turning his head until it was nearly parallel with the ground. He murmured something Gratian couldn't hear. Through the gap in Zion's legs, Gratian saw dense clouds of mist escaping from Leoric's mouth. Slowly, Leoric looked up, hands still buried in the snow. His gaze met Gratian's over Zion's boot. Even in the slight distance, Gratian could see the molten gold beginning to escape Leoric's irises and bleed out into the whites of his eyes. Zion spoke again, more forcefully this time. Leoric flicked his eyes upward. With great effort, he pulled his hands out of the snow. He rocked back on his heels and crouched again, still breathing rapidly. Zion watched him for a moment, then stood. He cupped Leoric's chin with his right hand. Then, with his left, he brushed the pad of his middle finger down the center of Leoric's face. As Zion's fingertip parted his lips, Gratian saw Leoric's breath catch in his chest. His hands trembled, just slightly, as Zion let go of his face. Zion bent, whispered something to Leoric, then walked back the way he'd come. Gradually, Gratian saw Leoric's chest slow and settle back into an even rhythm. When he turned toward Gratian, he was blinking slowly. The gold had gone from Leoric's crimson eyes, leaving their whites bloodshot. His face, loose and swollen, made him look as though he'd overslept. A red line ran down the bridge of his nose and cut into the bow of his lips. He licked across it, and Gratian winced. In the small gap between, he thought he glimpsed a sheen of blood smearing across Leoric's teeth. The wind across the plain shifted, rustling the long, snow-laden boughs of the pine trees along the edge of the forest. Gratian glanced up and turned his face into the wind. As it ruffled the fur inside his jacket hood, Gratian felt his curiosity returning. Not for the first time that night, he looked over his shoulder. The ruins of a citadel were behind their backs, but so far in the distance that even the spire of the citadel's Cybele Hall was but a needle against the southern horizon. Gratian had been glancing back at that spire periodically. He kept imagining that he could feel someone standing just inside the broken windows of the hall, watching his every move. He knew he couldn't see the windows at this distance, but he still felt their presence like an itch in the corner of his eye. He glanced briefly toward Leoric, head still bowed, then shifted his gaze back to the spire. It had been Leoric who had named the ruin as the actual Citadel of Fire. The building was always looming in the background of their yearly hunts, but Gratian had never taken it for anything but a part of the landscape. Of course, he had seen the boundary markers on most of their hunting trips, but this was the first that had taken them close to the ruin itself. Earlier in the night, the group's other water-down Arcana had asked what the ruin had once been. Leoric, seizing the opportunity as they rode, had treated the youth to an impromptu lecture on Citadel history. Gratian already knew the histories, but he listened anyway, enjoying the quiet lull of Leoric's voice as they traveled. The citadels were all designed by an Earth Domini named Cybele. Legend, and sometimes history, told that she had erected each of the citadel complexes with her own hands. Though Leoric cited the thousands of workers she oversaw, he too held that Cybele herself had created and perfected each citadel's Cybele Hall. The hall oriented each of the three citadels to one of the points of the compass. In the citadel of water, it reached toward the north, its supporting pillars sunk into the bed of the Lady's Lake. At the citadel of fire, Leoric had told them, Cybele oriented her hall to the east and set it over the Ogaha forest so that the Domini within might walk from edge to heart with ease. He gestured to the forest and continued, though the growth of the fire pines have spread beyond the influence of the citadel, you should still be able to see Cybele's hall once we come into Soil's Valley. Gratian knew from his studies of draconian geography that Soil's Valley was really only a gorge that the Rhine River had carved on its way out of the Rhines and down to the Crystal Sea. Erosion, quarrying, and careful planning had reduced the Rhine to no more than a stream that winded lazily through the remnants of its youth. Later, some unknown scholar had slapped her lover's name to it, Perhaps so everyone would call it the same thing. Now, though, the Ark swore that Soliel had been a goddess in the old religions. By the time the Ark had finished lecturing, the party had begun the descent into Soliel's valley. Eon, riding next to Gratian, scoffed when the Ark's voice fell silent. Does he only shut up when he's got trees to look at? Gratian laughed and said, he's an energy, I find. Of course he shuts up around trees. I know you're a clod, Eon, but you're an earth dom. Can't you feel the life in the forest? Eon rode quietly for a few minutes and then surged ahead, face set in a dark scowl. As they reached the center of the valley, the Ark called out, look upward. We're approaching the remains of the Citadel's Cybele Hall. Gratian looked up. Through the long limbs of the fire pines, he could just make out the dark pitted stone of a massive wall. As he passed under it, the rows of windows came into view. They were perched on pillars that Gratian fancied leaned just a bit and were strangely free of the encroaching forest. When he drew even with one of the pillars, Gratian stopped his horse and looked up. Though he tried to imagine the stone floor that had once filled the void above his head, the windows were what held his gaze. He marveled at their size, mentally comparing them to those in the Cybele Hall at the Water Citadel. Much like those, the windows above him were the width of 20 armored men standing side by side. The iron strut that ran the height of their frames was broken, but Gratian could imagine it equal to the colossal dragons that Cybele was said to have built her halls to accommodate. Though the windows in the Citadel of Water still shone in the evening sun, the frames above his head were empty. The clear crystal glass was gone. No swirls of color accented every pane of glass, and no hint of Cybele's art could be seen in the frame design. The iron of the panes had melted and been twisted into spikes that stabbed into the empty body of the chamber. The stone walls themselves sagged under the weight of time, held up only by remnants of Cybele's immense dominion. Gratian was pondering the integrity of the walls when a high wind made a dangling piece of iron creak. With a jolt, he urged his horse forward, fearful that the windows would collapse and drive their spikes into his head. When the hunting party reached the other side of the valley, Gratian turned in his horse and looked back through the tops of the ruined windows. He shuddered to imagine how far the dawn night within must have fallen when the floor of the chamber gave way. Thank you.
Our next reader is Jake Collin. Jake is a French and English double major with a concentration in creative writing. In the fall, he will be attending the University of Arkansas Masters of Fine Arts program to get his master's in literary translation. It's very impressive. He is inspired, he says, by authors like Cormac McCarthy and Natasha Trethewey, and often focuses his own creative writing on his native South. In his free time, he enjoys hiking and spending time with his wife and his friends. Jake.
It's called the South. With golden leaves loosing red and green on fields where cows crop grass, treading over ebony obsidian where it's hidden underfoot, a pupillary glint by the old fire road breaking the trunks, leading to the abandoned church with broken lock and books and dust coats everything, the pews, your lungs, the cobblestone ways where centipede grass grows with a fever. With rivers in Georgia where green water lazes forth faster than you think. He jumped in naked, pulled from sight, shoes still tied on the bridge, where men and women sally forth in night finding each other, under the ochre moon behind Zarzar's, city cafe, behind dumpsters, beds of pickups, briefly one, then separate again, zipping, ring of light in denim, lip full. How many hung in Tennessee? The walking bridge people loved Sunday when it was so warm in January, the trees on Cherry Street blossomed briefly, pink and white and crimson. And this one's called Passing Through. It's late and the few lights that string along the highway are dim as my fiancé drives through Georgia, where the roads are encased in briars and thickets and trees, where kudzu rains its way through fields and over fences, greening and slick. I got up for work at 6 that day, and I'm just getting down to sleep in my soft bed in Tennessee when she sees, for a moment, the beams of her own headlights reflected in dark orbs in the hard shape of bones sprouting from the leaping buck as he glides above the road before her twisting hands. When I get the call, I stand slowly and pull my pants back up around my ankles, and for a moment, I'm in Macon. That Memorial Day, she burnt the burgers, but I ate 2 anyway, saying I liked the taste. We were on the riverbank, and the mosquitoes licked our faces and gummed our tongues as we spoke, and Mother carried a baby in her arms like a football, breathing. The car is still smoking when I get there, but the blood and hair has mostly burned off. When I ask how she is, she just laughs and shakes her head and locks her brow below the crook of my collarbone, her hair smelling like grass and rain and rosemary, and for a moment we just listen to our own breath beating. And this last one's called Blood Moon. The grass lilts up, surrounding these pale arms, these crooked toes, this bent back aching to flatten itself against the ground, while lights laugh themselves beyond the horizon, hewing the river into a minstrel flow. Bullfrogs lithe out of the water and groan into night, while the locusts and gnats and flies rise twisting into the wind of storms that race and roar across the sky, bringing a darkness that can be felt, that boils against skin and smothers the horses in the field, the sheep, and the goats. The moon peeks through clouds and rouges itself like a doorframe on Passover Day. A child's wails waft over on the amber breeze. Thanks.
Erin Griffin Collum writes to explore themes of connection, faith, and uncertainty. She's an interdisciplinary studies major in writing and religion and a French minor, and she hopes to continue studying in these areas after graduation. She works at the service desk of the Memorial Library and as the editor of Barry's literary and arts magazine, Ramifications. In her free time, she reads, crochets, watches television, and spends time with her husband and friends. Erin.
This first one is called Eating Grapefruit. I am a dermatologist in surgery, intent upon my patient. I tear the milky veil of skin away from flesh beneath, the pasty ochre rind already shredded like a poor-pocked epidermis. I am a miner searching for quartz, stripping the surface vegetation, quarrying in this pink pit, and the tourmaline juice drips down my arm. I am a florist killing flowers, unpacking petals tied with root-like white threads, plucked out of a bed once alive, now clipped and bitten, arranged in my throat, a bitter bouquet. We've been married 7 years, and the dull frustrations of daily tasks last longest. Knuckle cracks from cold sinks at lunch, chapped lips, and the sounds of disapproval that solidify between us after you leave your shirt on the bed frame and stuff one more bit into the already full trash so you don't have to take it out, stare at my breasts when I change, and laugh at me when I giggle, wine-saturated, but not when I try to be funny. You touch germs, touch me, touch my clean towels that always come back dirty. You nod and apologize for nothing particular I remember, but you did leave the cardboard roll on the back of the toilet for me to recycle after you made me coffee with extra cream and brought it to me like you do every morning. This last one is the Carmelite Convent Dachau. What are we to do with abandoned Dachau but transform it into a convent, a constant prayer in the watchtower? The warehouse, now empty, replaced canisters of Zyklon B with 21 nuns. What are we to do with abandoned Dachau but fix crosses over its barracks instead of stars that were extinguished west in Harthium, too sick to act? as priestly spies for righteous soldiers. What are we to do with abandoned Dachau but enshrine 139 Christians, naked barrack skeletons for the 160,000 Jews who worked out their lives there? What are we to do with abandoned Dachau when hope of forgiveness evades us so that we must live in its heaviness under wimples of guilt, enslaved to a prayer? Thank you.
Melissa Delosier is a senior English major with a concentration in writing and a history minor. During her college career, she has had a variety of jobs across campus, including working in technical services and Memorial Library, spending a semester with the Martha Berry Digital Archive, serving as assistant director of the Writing Center, and working in the Office of Financial Aid. Born in Pennsylvania, she has lived in 5 states across the country. Following graduation, she intends to keep up the tradition by moving to Texas and pursuing a career in luxury hotel administration. Cleopatra. Concealed with throat consumed by ravaging, the mocking dust remembered sandaled feet. A choking carpet, myself banishing, I laid with dust, I laid with you in trade. For seat, for throne, for stolen crown, I laid with you, courageous, closed eyes to rise. For I weighed the price, bid to trade between my pride and country, Egypt's cries. Betrayed by brother, spouse, a child to die, betrayed by softened heart, my weakness for you, my fighter lover. You captured my side, surrendered, you as vice became my core. I stand a queen of water, sand and stone, remaining loyal Caesar yet alone. Oblivion. A room glows warm from the inside, as outside it is forgotten in the dark that threatens to steal us from our homes, our sanity, to marry us to the things we see, the stars, the expanse, to the things we don't see, the grass pricking beneath our feet, pressing us to keep moving, to keep running. We are all running, fighting oblivion as the dark surrounds us. We are not candles to be extinguished with a tickle of wind or a sneeze. We are exploding stars, exploding with light, with heat, with passion. I am exploding because I refuse to fall into oblivion. And someday the pieces of me will fall all around you, and I will not be lost to oblivion. And Crimson Rain. Beating heart leaves tears as raindrops strike against the window, rapid movement ending in abrupt silence until thunder overpowers belittled strength and lightning reveals weakness, threatening to strike through the glass, through the rain, onto the bed to meet tainted, staring pools, filled with water over purple crescents, the colors of beautiful torment, everlasting agony echoing as rustling branches scrape glass. Pools of water stare upward on the bed as fluttering leaves black in and out. Rustling restlessness breaks silence, whispering water on a dripping wind. Thunder overcomes thunder as claps overcome shouts, breaking boulders. Landslides snatch small pebbles and their abandoned scream, forgotten in a wind, as thunder shouts and pools quiver. Shadows cover the moon. Reflecting pools blink open as crimson streams are driven down. Beating heart lost in a room, shadows shudder. Lightning hides. Broken glass falling in a pool. Leaves cover, leaves conceal, closed.
Megan Hewitt is primarily a fiction writer who enjoys writing fantasy stories. When she is not working on short stories in her novel, she is riding and caring for her horses, Ginny and Monty. After graduation, she will be returning to Raleigh, North Carolina to find a job. She's hoping to work in recruiting for companies and to write in her spare time. One of her flash fiction pieces has been accepted by Bookends Review, so keep an eye out for Noises in November. Megan Hewitt.
Our Living Souls. It floats somewhere between space and the core of the earth, the heart of the universe, in many pieces that encompasses our living souls and each hand we touch. How can we help when a voice makes a difference? In the right place, it means everything to the struggling heart that needs to hear, I know you, I care about you, I am here for you when you call. The difference that we can make when the wind brings the cries to our ears. They don't always need help, but they want someone to see when they feel alone and scared. Because the world can be harsh, with a sharp voice that scolds the child in all of us. Hold out a hand to the girl that is used to being alone, and the boy that is lost. Open their eyes to the kindness that can be felt when someone understands the place you have found in yourself. It is scary to feel that your place is alone. The world wants nothing to do with your fears. It turns you away when you beg for help. You can't escape the place in your head that makes you feel like you don't belong. It can hold you back into nothingness because you don't deserve better. You pray for someone to find you in your mind when you have lost your way. Sometimes you feel at home, but the corners hold shadows of what could be laughter. Would you have a different place if you made some other choice? But this can feel right, alone with the music loud in a little cocoon, waiting to be ready. It will be all right, and this place is missed, the quiet culture that is known so well. Someone holds out their hand and guides me through a place in the world, show my feet the way in the universe. Land. Earth is up for grabs. Take a handful and a piece into thick, greasy palms. Get those nails deep inside the dense dirt and start tearing it apart. It is yours for the breaking and spoiling, so that your children cannot have a piece without holes dug deep into the ground. Build up into the sky until the blue is lost to those who just love the stars. Block out the sun till it hurts eyes when it manages to skate around Rapunzel's metal tower with her golden hair in a bun in the window, frayed ends splitting into light sprays. Keep the grass from people who like dirt between their toes and a breeze on their hands. Keep the sky filled with metal, pushing the earth down until there is nothing left to walk on. Search for the quiet in the last sanctuary few dare to explore. Only those with bright eyes of adventure and wonder in the things they aren't able to see in lazy houses overlooking fresh green golf courses. The brave ones wander through the lost forest that time forgot to interfere and change history into something we hate to see but desire to live. Thanks to those who strive to protect and remember the ancestors who walked the world with no idea of what we have created. Hike the narrow path and follow the world out into oblivion. Shut your eyes, it is all going to be okay. Dear God, find me a place where I am happy. Give me a world where I am home. Open the door to the sanctuary for my toes, where I can run without fear into the loving arms of my family that I left behind so long ago. Send me out among the stars to pick up their pieces and particles stashed among the planets and people brighter than my sun. Would I be happy there, with creation at my palms turned up or down to the nearest star? Is that my home hidden in the closest nebula? Send me the strength to define myself in this spot and not wander with myself who I could be in this place or that place. I'm a million different people. If you ask me over there, it will be a new me. I will mean something altered as I float away. How will we translate my definition when I stand 2 feet away or 200 million miles? Can I be the same person? Hold on to me tight, and I will clasp my fingers until you start to slip, and I will dig in my nails. Don't give me reason to let go. or I won't be coming back. I will let you drift away into the clouds and watch as your body disappears beyond the night sky. I'll stick to the ground, my home moving with my mind. I can always feel at peace so long as I know who I am to myself. Thank you.
Bailey Merlin is as epic as her last name suggests, as she has the uncanny ability to know how to fix just about anything, as well as accomplish 20 different tasks while simultaneously streaming artsy French films in all 10 seasons of Friends. She also has a strange affinity for Mexican food, despite being highly allergic to avocados. Inspired by Julia Child and Kermit the Frog, as well as being bolstered by many other people in her life, Bailey will venture out into the world with as much confidence as any self-respecting wizard is able to conjure up. But we have an update. So Bailey is off to Indianapolis, she just decided, for an MFA in creative writing at Butler University, where she has the honor of becoming Butler's very first Ruth Lilly Service Scholar in recognition of her impressive history of service and her interest in creative writing as art therapy.
I was wondering who was going to get to read a fun intro. Thank you. Before I get started, I would like to dedicate this to the man who inspired it. Jimmy Burns is one of the most interesting elderly gentlemen I've ever met in my entire life. So this one's for you, Jimmy. Over easy. I'm sitting in a booth of a Waffle House, watching melting snow slide off the roof of an Arby's across the way. It's loud inside, sizzling, popping, shouting, the sound of old music from a new jukebox. Worn-out waitresses with their blue shirts and ribald jokes laugh at one another, as if there were a wall between them and their customers. They speak in code. Bacon, quarter cheese plate, order a medium triple scrambled plate, waffle. Everything always seems to end with waffle, like the period at the end of a sentence. I sip coffee and quietly scan the restaurant that is full of an older generation. It's early still, only 7 a.m., and it's been snowing, which only allows the brave out to the streets for the Ford F-150s. Meanwhile, I sip my coffee that's been diluted by 5 small containers of cream and more sugar than I'm willing to admit to. I'm waiting. I've been here for an hour waiting. With enough dirty looks from the waitress and an itchiness to get back to my bed, I prepare to leave. But then there he is, bespectacled, snow-white hair, canyon-like wrinkles, and dark tan skin. He takes off his hat when he comes through the second glass door, and all the waitresses greet him as if he were family. "Hey, Jimmy boy, what you up to, honey?" The larger woman in the red shirt and black bandana calls out. He smiles at her, showing off pearly white teeth that I don't exactly believe are all his. "Oh, not much, sweetheart. Just trying to get warm. You got my coffee ready for me?" "Go on, sit over there and I'll get it right to you." She points to the booth next to mine with a wink. He hobbles on, saying hello to the occasional diner until he manages to scoot into his seat. The woman is over to him in a dash, laying out his silverware on a laughably small napkin, sliding a cup of coffee his way. They exchange pleasantries while I try and hide my eavesdropping as best I can. He orders, she leaves, and I make my move. "Good morning," I say as I come over to the table with my little cup of coffee that I can no longer drink because the sugar is glommed together at the bottom. It looks up at me with strikingly blue eyes that are hidden behind circular frames. "Well, good morning to you too, young lady." His voice is like a southern drawl in the sense that letters get forgotten or gummed up in his mouth. "Do you mind if I sit with you?" I ask, adopting a bit of a lilt myself. "Well, you just set your pretty self down." I do, and smile once more. "My name's Bailey. It's nice to meet you." An extension of the hand is a requirement in polite society. He takes my hand into his, which is all calloused and cool. "Jimmy Burns, nice to meet you." We shake for 2 seconds, then release. "Well, Mr. Burns, would you mind if I asked you a few questions?" I had nothing to do with that murder boy getting killed last week. His face is serious. A week goes by, and he bursts into laughter. I'm only joking. Should see your face." Jimmy's laugh is this odd hybrid of horse and seal. You hadn't been going for a minute there, I tell him. He settles himself down and takes a gulp of his coffee. We old geezers have to keep life interesting. But I suppose you want to ask me some questions? Yes, sir, I would. Do you mind if I record? Not at all, sugar. He acts as though this sort of thing happens a lot. Would you mind restating your name? James Michael Burns. Mr. Burns. Jimmy. Jimmy's fine, darling. I chuckle a little bit. Jimmy, how long have you lived in Rome? My whole life, I suppose. So 21 years? I ask flirtatiously. In response, Jimmy explodes into another hoarse seal laugh that has people turning to look over at us. Aren't you sweet? No, sugar, I was born here in 1934. I'm completely astonished. You're kidding me. No, ma'am, I was born August 25th, 1934. You don't look a day over 60. I mean that. Well, Jimmy starts in a bashful tone, and I imagine that he's blushing beneath that deep tan. Some people age better than others. It's all the beauty sleep I get. This young lady bothering you, Jimmy? The waitress asks when she comes over with a big plate of food. I marvel at how quickly things are cooked here. Now, Marie, I can take care of myself. This young lady was just asking me some questions for, what was it again? He turns his head back towards me. Oh, a paper I'm ready for class. See, I'm helping her with her education. Now go on. He encourages with firmness. She looks me up and down and disappears. Jimmy has gotten the cheesy egg and raisin bread plate and proceeds to squirt ketchup all over the eggs. Go on with your question, sugar. I look down at my notes and try to collect my thoughts. Well, if you've lived in Rome for that long, I guess you know a lot about it. Jimmy nods thoughtfully. Oh, I expect I know quite a bit. You from around here? No, sir. He hums. My mom and daddy lived here their whole lives and their families, and before that they were all from up north. They came down and set up cotton farms, but that was my mama's family. Now, my daddy wasn't much of a farmer, so he started working in that rayon plant that day it opened and had done odd jobs before. I bet you didn't know that part of that old factory was made out of marble, sent from Mussolini himself. You're joking. Not a bit, ma'am. So you lived through the Great Depression? I suppose I did, but I don't remember much of it. My mama told me it was real bad for her family on account of the cotton, but they made it through. Rome wasn't as bad off as some other cities. We always had food. I remember my mama making blankets for the people who lived around us, especially those who lose their jobs. It wasn't as bad as what you'd see in New York and the like. We were lucky. Either way, that sort of thing just sinks into your skin and teaches you lessons about money and family. Would you say you're close to your family? Oh, good Lord, yes. He chuckles again. I've got 7 children myself, 25 grandchildren, and 6 great-grandchildren. But I was always my mom and daddy's only, which was real unusual. But I came from a big family, lots of cousins and the like. A lot of them still alive and live in Rome, so we're close. Thanksgiving's a hell of a holiday, I'll tell you. That's fantastic. Now, well, it used to be a sigh. Lately, it's gotten a bit much without my wife and all. My kids come around, of course, but they all have their own lives. Rome wasn't big enough for them. They moved to Atlanta, to Chicago, to Houston, to San Francisco. One of my daughters married a man from England, and they live over in London. That was always all right with me and Christine, because we had each other, and we had a farm to take care of, and places to go, and lots of friends. Funny thing about getting older is that they don't tell you that you could be the one at the end of the race, holding the reins and the trophy all on your own. I take a moment to look at Jimmy. His eyes are fixed on the yellow-red massacre that is his scrambled eggs. There is a heaviness about him now that makes my heart ache. I reach out to touch the dark brown hand that's curled around the white coffee cup. He looks at me with sad blue eyes and nods a few times. Yeah, they didn't talk much about cancer when I was growing up, so you never think it'll happen to you. Isn't that the thing? Rome has all these hospitals and doctors and specialists, and they still can't fix your wife. She died a few years ago, but I still miss her every day. His voice picks up a bit here. I take flowers to Myrtle Hill every Thursday morning. That's where I was before I came here. Cleared out the snow on a grave, talked to her for a while, let her know how the kids are, grandbabies, that sort of thing. I think she likes it. There's a spot up there for me too. I'm not rushing to get there, but it'll be nice to be with her again. A moment passes between the two of us. Can I ask why you both never left Rome? Sure, sugar. We never left Rome because we love it here. Christine was from Pennsylvania. She was going to vacation down in Atlanta with some friends, but they pulled off her some gas. He's smiling now, eyes shining with remembrance. I saw her from the window. I was helping my cousin John out for the day, stocking things and what have you, and there she was, pretty as a picture. It was 1956, June. God, it was hot. And she was just fanning herself with a map. She was the prettiest woman I'd ever seen. So naturally I asked her out. When she told me she had plans, I told her she could stay the night with my lady cousins and then I'd take her to Atlanta the next day. He leans towards me with a mischievous expression. We got married the next week. I gasped. Her family must have been furious. Oh, they were for a time. But her father came down to meet me and everyone agreed we made a fine couple. We did. We were real shy. Here, look. And Jimmy takes out his wallet and hands me a small black and white photo. It's a young couple. A man in a sharp black suit and a woman in a light colored dress that goes down to her ankles. They're standing side by side in front of a small garden of flowers. His face is blurred and hers is alight as he appears to snug a kiss the second the shutter snapped. It's really beautiful. She was, wasn't she? Silence hangs for another moment. Who asked why we never left? Because we didn't need to. Everything we could ever want was right here. We traveled, of course, on vacations with the kids, but nothing was ever like Rome. It's warm here, well, the people I mean. And I couldn't leave it out. It'd be like leaving her behind. Jimmy and I sit in amicable silence for the better part of half an hour. Customers come and go, sounds rage on, and the smells fluctuate between batter and bacon. After a few refills of coffee, the waitress comes with a check for which I immediately reach. He laughs and shakes his head. Sure, you best be forgetting about that. My mama and my wife would have my head if I let a young lady pay for me or her own wallet.
Kate Barnum is an English major with a concentration in creative writing and a psychology minor. She's from Beaufort, South Carolina, and loves the ocean. She was first introduced to writing poetry as a sophomore here at Barry and fell in love with it. She views her poems as creative case studies, attempting to portray and understand the human mind. Her biggest inspirations are Ginsberg, Nabokov, Faulkner, Dr. Meek, Dr. Donnelly, as well as her fellow writers here at Barry, who have been very supportive and write beautiful works of art. Kate Barnum.
Nighthawk Enlightened after Edward Hopper. I'm all that is contained in post-storm fuzz and static, silhouette outlined in fluorescent lights between smudged glass pane, liminal space, a dark perfect reflection in the night window with leaves swirling in my head, autumn tornadoes on sidewalks, unattached. There is forgetfulness inviting invisible lips back to reality, caught unaware and staring at the ghost face for too long, and making it worse, like a repeated whispering of an empty word, your name, and darkness echoes from a glass-bitten and bleeding mouth with no appetite, then blinding yellow diner eyes, cold and hungry, looking back at me, first noticing they're sleep-deprived before realizing they're mine. Southern Garden. Mason jars brim with moonshine, with snake venom, poison gift from Eden, trapped sun stilled for scorching throats, slithering slow and thick down like his breath and hers. The whiskey shards from his hot, panting dog mouth slicing into her eyes, their bare feet barely touching and dirt stained by tobacco, spit, sperm, and pollen. She melts, turning to mud while nectar and honey slowly drip, drip. From twig tips to chipped porch, then lying on her back beneath the stained glass tree, she finally opens her eyes to find a blighting kaleidoscope world where bottles bloom like magnolias, dark green and sapphire, naked flowers like plucked, dropped in wet dirt, stepped upon. He forgot to zip his pants up after sweat poured down from heavens, no animals as witness, just jars and bottles, the garden's glass eyes, reflective surfaces capturing images played on repeat eternally. Sorry, I have allergies. Sorry. Another one. A dim, vibrating glow, your fluttering pulse causing light bulbs to flicker over white potatoes. You crept in again, enveloped in shadow, whispering white butter lies in my cauliflower ear, lightning crack in window pane, an infestation of the marble room, of water vapor walls, a warm wooden floor beneath sweaty bare feet, constructed of crystals, a cucumber mosaic imagined emerging elongated worm-like larvae, versus arbitrary evening butterfly repetition. Through misty air distortions, a wingspan, a lifespan, being without concrete definitions, exactitude with blurry edges magnified to fine pointedness, deformed in perfect symmetry, whispering deafening truths to my artichoke heart. What are you? Metallic in taste, silky to touch, languid, fluid, weak, dwindling, spindly spinning on the edge of madness. Lack of logic upsets my stomach, causing mental shouts, lists of commands demanding you to be rhythmically free. A baroque and broken bug, a color whose hue is somewhat less yellow. Be the equinox around the ecliptic, curving slightly upward, the corners of the mouth you moth your flavor, smoky and raw, pepper and rose. A fluttering sneeze, then the breeze picks you up, takes you away. Inhabiting my space, a line drawing, finely calculated, a graph on a grid connected geometrically, meticulous squares and corners, disrupted by your form and motion, twitching, flickering, fuzzy presence, making it your own infinity, a scattered sketch in ink, blotting out the sun. Your last breath, a spasm, living a life made of dusty glass and light, finally landing in a tin of coffee grounds, wings made of smoke dissolving, Arabic aroma, more steam forming, a white cross above the corpse of an infected, dissected insect, now deceased, now digested, eternal butterflies always in my stomach. Thanks.
And our final reader is Chelsea Risley. Chelsea is an English and Spanish double major and has a minor in Latin American and Caribbean studies. She plans to graduate and spend the rest of her life neck deep in flowers and weddings and poems. She dreams of one day taking her pet hippo for walks on the beach with her husband and maybe going to grad school or something.
So this first poem is new and not in the book, so I hope you like it. It's called Sosua, Dominican Republic. Down the beach, past the resort, past snorkelers, banana boat drivers, cigar stores, and women offering manicures, the shops huddled together, air heavy and black and carrying 2-day-old fish and beer stench. People halted their conversations as I passed, and I realized that everyone was staring. The sun shone brightly on the bluer than blue water just to my right, and children splashed and shouted. I could imagine the vibrant reef, the friendly fish, and the shock of sea urchins. It seemed odd to be so uncomfortable in such a beautiful place. I didn't realize what made me so uneasy until I noticed the cheery white and pink chalk lines. The sign said, "Look for adventure? We have women here." From then on, I couldn't unsee. Tiny girls in bikinis already, fighting to keep them on in the relentless pounding of waves. One woman giving a massage to a man on a beach chair, back, arms, legs, and suddenly under the shorts, front and back. Several women perched on bar stools, eyes searching out the next customer, the next paycheck, the next ticket out, all the while hoping their sons were doing their homework at the kitchen table. Even white men hoot and point from their sleazy German bars, sweating beer and dripping sausage juice. Surely they do not notice I am 16. "Que desejar un rapidito?" they shouted. I didn't know at the time that I should be furious. Later, in charge of several 12-year-old girls, I realized, no, I don't want a quick fuck. Who do you think you are? My girls, they wave, they smile, say hola and te amo to all those men lurking in doorways because they're the only words they know. And I rage at those men who are afraid of their own blackness, their need, seeking salvation by commodifying blonde children. They try to claw out of their personal third worlds to the better place they think they'll find on top of a white woman. I can't think of enough palabrotas to hurl at their leers, their self-satisfied grins. I hate that they make even the word woman feel dirty in the curl of their lips as they claim their property, their mujer. I want to tell them that I may be a gringa, but I understand. I see them, their lust, their fear. I want to shatter them, their construction of a world that entitles them to do whatever makes them feel stronger than they are. So this next one is in the book. It's an excerpt from an essay poem thing called On Space, Real Writers, and Mind Maps. I collect memories like I collect skeleton keys and glass jars. They are far easier to pack in a U-Haul than my green wingback chair or my back porch with its drip, drip, leak, and line of window cacti. Memories stay crisp, sharp, uncurled by humidity. They do not fade to sunlight, the color of nostalgia filtering through trees on the roads winding through my mind unless I ask them to. I have mind maps to keep up with my collection. They look like this. A carefully arranged mishmash with clear paths to travel, but not so clear that you can't get lost on winding spirals of memory. The time I chatted with a gentleman in a Pepto-Bismol suit on the London Tube leads to the time I cut my brother's finger with a pair of blue scissors, leads to the smell of fried plantains and garlic broccoli accidentally garnished with tiny white mealworms. The space underneath my curls, between my 2 ears and their 5 earrings, encompasses space and time, the 22 years of my life, plus all the years forward and back that I've overheard in conversations or in books, all the places I've traveled, all the spaces I've seen and touched and felt, all the smells and tastes of my own experience, and those I adopted. I'm a wide-eyed washer rewarded with memories, saturated with life, breath, time, and distance. Home is always at my fingertips. I carry it with me, alongside the desert dust of Chad, the smell of fried okra sizzling in Aunt Corinne's kitchen, and the sigh the down pillow heaved in Spokane. Search my map and share my overheard truths. Thank you.
Well, thank you all for coming. I hope you'll stay around a while and talk to these fabulous students and have some cookies, whatever cheese we got. This is a hard moment. This was a really fabulous group of students, as you could hear. And every decade or so, it happens that you get just a really extraordinary group, and this was one of those years. So, congratulations to all of you for really fabulous work. Thank you for letting us be part of your lives, and stay in touch. Thank you.